Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be Holkham's race report. So for those of you who don't know, basically my name's Lewis. I'm fairly new to triathlon still. This is my third ever half distance race this year, all within about 7 weeks of each other or something. You can find the other videos on my channel. I've done race reports of them to see kind of how they went. I will be referring back to them in this to obviously compare results and see what I did well, what I did wrong. Definitely made mistakes in the first two, so hoping to rectify them in this one. So I'm going to jump straight into it before I ramble on for too long, so I seem to have a habit of doing that. So I'm going to start with the day before, racking the bike and stuff. That all went pretty smoothly, to be honest. I got up in the morning, did like a half an hour run, but drove down to Holkham. It was only like 2.5 hours away from us. Got the bike racked, went and checked in at this little Airbnb. This Airbnb was really warm Saturday, and so this Airbnb was a bit like a greenhouse, and it held heat so much. It was on a stables as well, so there was a lot of flies. We took our dog, which meant I didn't get the best of night's sleep, to be honest. The dog was up a lot because he was very, very hot, and so he couldn't settle too well. So didn't get the best night's sleep, maybe got 3 or 4 hours of okay sleep. So next day up at 3:30. One mistake I made in previous races, I actually managed to get a good breakfast in today. One thing that was good about staying in an Airbnb is it meant it had a toaster, so I had some bagels. I had 2 bagels just with some butter, and yeah, and then left the Airbnb at 4, got to the race for I think it was about 4:45. Checked tyres, got everything pumped up, got all my bikes set up, got nutrition sorted, and all of that lovely stuff. So then onto the swim. My plan for the swim, so my last 2 races, I don't know if it's nerves, a bit of adrenaline, a bit of both, I don't know what it was, but my shoulder sort of blew up in the first 300-400 metres of swimming. I don't know if I maybe went out too fast or I hadn't practiced enough in a wetsuit and a tri-suit. So a couple of days before this race, I actually did a sea swim in my wetsuit and my tri-suit. I think that helped a lot because as soon as I got in the water, I weren't used to swimming, or like my last swim weren't in a pool, it was in a wetsuit and tri-suit, so I knew exactly how it felt and I knew exactly what to expect. I did the first few hundred metres fairly like controlled. I didn't want my shoulders to blow up like they did in the first 2 races, so I went out a lot more controlled, and I thought instead of thinking go fast, I'm going to think swim smooth and relaxed. You tend to swim faster that way anyway, and that was exactly what happened. So I started quite far back in the group as well, so I was, I don't know, way far back, like 4th or 5th wave to go off. So my thinking was that I'm probably going to have to swim for a few people to find a set of feet that are good to swim on, and that was basically the case. So I got out straight away. It was a time trial start, so you went off every 6 seconds or something. 2 of you went. The guy that I went with, I think I just kind of swam past, and then I found the guys that were next ahead of me, swam on their feet for a little bit, like I don't know, 50-100 metres, realised they were probably swimming a little bit too slowly, so I went round, and I kind of kept doing that for the first sort of maybe 500 metres, and then some guy came past me. He was swimming, he looked like he was swimming really fast, so I hopped onto his feet, managed to stay on his feet for a couple of 100 metres, and then I don't want to be horrible to the guy, but I think his sighting wasn't great. The way the swim works, it was like you go round this lake sort of this way, and when you got to that sort of end buoy, he was sort of swimming right around the outside of the lake, whereas you could obviously swim just buoy to buoy, which would have been a lot shorter. So I sort of decided I'm going to swim buoy to buoy and hop off his feet. He still ended up swimming, we ended up swimming basically around the same sort of pace, because he was swimming faster but going longer, and I was swimming shorter but going more direct, if that makes sense. Ended up getting back onto his feet at another buoy, and this was kind of where I realised that I was swimming really well, and sort of the switching point for me was in my first 2 races there was no chance. If you asked me to speed up at all, there was absolutely no chance I'd be able to do it. My shoulders were that dead within like a few 100 metres. This time, because I was concentrating on my technique and swimming controlled and relaxed, I didn't feel burnt out at all, to the point where I had an extra gear to go into. So I was able to, this guy, he was swimming well, and he lost me a little bit after that last buoy where I said so I'm more direct. I was in my own little world really. I was quite enjoying it, and there's a lot of weeds and stuff, so I was concentrating on that, and it was, yeah. So I ended up losing his feet a little bit, and if you know, most people, if you lose feet, it can be quite hard to get back onto them, because so once that sort of elastic snaps, the same on the bike and stuff with drafting, once that elastic snaps, it's quite hard to get it back. But I managed to. So he swam off again, and that was when I was like, oh, actually, I could go and catch him up, and I had the power and the shoulders and whatever to be able to go and do it. So that was a huge positive for me, and I ended up coming out. Also, just a note, the timing strip on exit of the swim was like halfway around transition. So the official result says like 32 minutes, but I stopped my watch. I got out of the water, which was some like weird sandy stuff, which was quite hard to walk through, went up a little slope, started running into transition just a little bit, and stopped my watch there. So the swim time, the actual swim time, and then the official time are quite different. But my overall swim time was 31 minutes and 4 seconds, and my last swim was 29 minutes, but that swim was short. This one was a little bit long. And basically, if you just go by pace, this is my fastest swim. So like per 100 meters, 100 yards, this is my fastest swim yet. And it felt the easiest swim. So came out the water, and I felt really, really good. I was so happy with that swim, because I felt like I hadn't burnt any matches, but I'd swam fast, controlled, and yeah, I've not used up too much energy. And then into transition, in my last race, my shoulders were so blown up that I couldn't actually reach behind and grab my wetsuit to undo it. This time, completely opposite, shoulders were fine. Wetsuit came off really well, helmet, everything on, that was absolutely fine. Something still that I'm yet to do is have my shoes actually clipped into my pedals and then run with the bike. Still need to practice that a little bit more, I think, before I feel confident enough to do it in a race. But overall, I think I had an okay transition. Much like the swim, this is where I saw some big improvements to my last two races. So my last two races, I've been too hesitant to go past people. It sounds really silly. If I'm completely honest, it's that they look fast, so they look like they're going to be really good cyclists, and they are really good cyclists. And there's a few of them together, and a few of them look like they're really fast. So my initial thought is, they're going to be quicker than me. Just hang on to the back of them, or work with them, and sort of try and stick to their pace. And in the last two races, I think that cost me a lot, because I don't think I was nearly as fast as I should have been on the bike. So basically, I wanted to avoid that situation as much as possible, and I wanted to prove to myself that I can pace my own bike, and I can ride at the watts that I want to ride at, and I don't have to judge my race as much off what other people are doing. Obviously, it's completely different in professional races, or if you're at the front end of a race. I wasn't. Like I said, I started way far back. So, and within like 5 miles maybe, a lot of us got caught up behind a horse box thing for quite a while, for a good few minutes, which was really frustrating because it was going really slowly. And so there's a big group of us that sort of all came together. Again, they all looked like fast guys, and it was that moment they overtook the horse box, and I got stuck behind it a little bit longer than them. So then I came round and I got back onto them guys, and it was at sort of that moment that I made the decision. They were going fast and they looked fast, but I thought I'm not gonna do what I did last time, because it would have been at that point I'd probably gone, okay, let's stick with these guys and see how they ride. I thought, no, because my watts were down on what I wanted to ride at, I thought I'm just gonna go straight past them. I'm gonna completely ignore them. I'm not gonna see what they're doing. I'm not gonna do anything basically. I'm not going to look behind me. I'm just going to ride at my watts, go round, and I did exactly that. And before I know it, within 5 minutes, they were nowhere to be seen. So that kind of made me instantly realise that I don't need to stick with people. I don't need to ride with others. I don't need to find a little group to ride with. I don't need to do any of that. I can just ride at whatever I did. And basically, that was the story for the rest of the ride. Really, was I stuck to. It was quite an undulating course, so average power was a little bit down on what I thought it would have been. I felt like at most of it I was pushing around 260 watts. My average power ended up being like 235 with a 250 normalised. But it was, like I say, it was quite undulating. There was a lot of descents and like that horse box example, I was not pedalling for a few minutes really. So that probably brought it down. And I came out with a bike time of 2:20, which again, for a completely solo ride, like I had no help. Rode with no one the whole time. Was literally by myself for the whole thing. I'm pretty happy with that. It's not I think if I were in a group or was at the front of the race where the faster guys were, that maybe would have been a couple of minutes quicker. But to have a solo effort like that and feel strong, and it was more. The time's good. The pace was the best pace I've ever had out of all 3 races, and like I said, it's probably the hardest course out of the 3 races. 23.8 miles an hour. So yeah, I think I rode it really well for where I was, and it was more not the time or the pace or anything like that. It was more proving to myself that I don't have to stick with people and I can do the race that I want to race. So that was my biggest positive out of this whole day was that, I think. Then coming towards the end of the bike, something that again was a little bit annoying, like the horse box situation, but honestly I don't really care too much. Is you on Holkham, the last maybe even mile is all like downhill. Coming back into transition, it's a really skinny path as well because there's runners coming up the other side of it. So if you get stuck behind someone there, you can't overtake. So I got stuck behind someone that was not going slowly at all. Like, we could have gone a lot faster, but it didn't make any difference really. But the only thing was I couldn't see in front of me because there's a person there where transition was. Or basically I didn't know when to take my feet out of my shoes and put them on top ready for transition. So I was hoping the person in front of me might do it, and then as soon as they do it, I will do it. They never ended up doing it, so I didn't end up doing it either. It came up on me quite quick with transition, but it doesn't, again, it's maybe 20 seconds, 15 seconds if that. It might have saved. So yeah, ran into transition again, had a pretty decent transition. That was when I put socks on. So my last 2 races I put socks on before the bike. This time I rode sockless, proper triathlete. And yeah, it was all fine. So then socks on, shoes on, grabbed my big gel and got out onto the run. I think where that last sort of mile of the bike ride is all downhill, you're not pedaling at all. That gave my legs a chance to recover a little bit. So as soon as I got out onto the run, my legs felt really good. I felt really, really strong. But I had been warned by a guy named Gavin, who was a really nice guy, by the way. I sat and chatted to him. We've raced a few times before. Yeah, so he sort of mentioned that he's done the course before, and that it's a 3-lap course, and the first mile of each of them laps is like a long incline. So I had that in the back of my mind. I don't want to go out too fast, but my legs felt so good, and so I went out sort of conservatively based on how my legs felt. And I did my first mile, which was like the one pretty much straight uphill, was a 6:44 minute per mile. So not crazy fast, but pretty decent for the climb. And then after that, it's like a bit more like undulating, and then a little bit of a really slow descent back down to the start of the lap. So sort of sped up down to a 6:27 minute per mile for the first, like by the end of the first lap, and then sort of repeated that process again. So back uphill, go a little bit steady, then speed up again. And for the first like 8 miles or first 2 laps, 8-9 miles, my legs actually felt really good. I was averaging a really solid pace. I think it was around the 6:30 minute per mile, which would have been the same sort of speed that I did at Nottingham. But again, arguably Nottingham's a lot easier course than this. So was feeling really strong. And then basically the last hill or last lap, my legs just went. I went down to a 7:07 minute per mile, which was obviously a lot slower. It's like over 20 seconds slower than my first time up the hill. And yeah, it was a really hot day. I don't think I drank enough. Something that I should mention is on the bike, the last 2 races I've had 2.5 litres of fluid on the bike with a lot of carbs. I thought previously that was too much fluid, because basically I've gone to the toilet for a wee in both them races like 2 or 3 times, and they were like long wees. So my theory was that I probably drank too much. So this time I reduced it down by 1 litre. So I had 1.5 litres of fluids on the bike. I think for this day that wasn't enough. I still had 300 grams of carbs, which it weren't until after this race that I realised I think that's way too much for me. For 2 hours and 20 minutes, 300 grams of carbs. Bear in mind, I'm not the best at training with like a load of carbs and stuff, so my stomach's not that used to it. I really struggled to then get fluid and nutrition on the run. So I had that big gel with me. I probably only had half of it, which again is not enough. Fluid would give me cramps and make me feel a little bit bloated if I had them like in the aid stations. So I kind of avoided them a little bit, and I think I paid the price for it here when it was back up that hill. You know when you go like, you lose all the fluid in your body and you're, rather than sweating, you're just dry. So you just feel all the dry salt all over you and you don't feel wet anymore from sweat or anything. I hit that, and I kind of knew that that's probably a little bit of dehydration starting to kick in, which isn't good. And then if I'm completely honest, the last like 3 and a bit miles was a real battle. After that hill, my legs had nothing. I felt energyless. Like I said, I couldn't cool myself down. I was overheating, and I managed to just about hold in. So the 10th mile was a 7:07. The 11th mile was a 7:03, which is that sort of undulating bit. And then as that steady decline sort of kicked in, it was a 6:51, then a 6:41, and then the last little bit, which is like pretty much dead flat, or if not still a little bit of a decline. The run was a little bit long. It was, I don't know, like 400 meters long or something, and that last little bit averaged a 6:43 minute per mile, which, you know, is pretty slow. You should be able to hopefully pick it up a little bit towards the end, but I couldn't. I had nothing. I was literally hanging on for dear life. But that gave me a half marathon time of 1:28 something. So it's not a bad time. It is the slowest out of the races that I've done, but I think it is definitely the hardest course that I've done. And my average pace was like a 6:41 minute per mile, so it's not too far off what I did in the last couple of races. But overall effort was definitely a lot higher. Did not have another few meters in. Honestly, I reckon if they asked me to run another 100 meters by the end of that, I couldn't have done it. So yeah, and that gave me an overall time of 4:25, like 13 or 14, I think it was. That was probably the best executed race, and how I felt in terms of the race overall. Swim was really good, bike was really good, and run was okay, I would say. What would I change in the future? I need to sort the hydration and nutrition plan out. I think that could be better to help me towards the end of that run. I think I need to position myself better among people, because at the end of the day, as much as it is meant to be like an individual time trial, drafting does play a factor. It plays a factor in the swim. If you can swim with faster guys, you go faster. It plays a factor on the bike. If you're with faster guys and you've got faster guys up the road, you go faster. It's just how it is. So I think if I position myself better, that's some free speed, definitely. I think I'm happy, basically. Happy with how the day went. Also, it was lovely to meet some of you guys out there. There's a guy named Lewis. He came up to me towards the end of the run, was running behind me. This was at the point that I was dying, so I probably sounded rude and horrible, which if I did, I'm sorry. But I couldn't get string any words together. But he said, "Can I be in your YouTube video if I run behind you?" which I thought was quite funny. So yeah, it was lovely to meet him. We had a chat after and stuff as well. He was a really nice guy. Obviously met Triathlon Dan. He was there, so yeah, chatted to him for a bit, which was lovely. Yeah, a few people. So it was really nice to speak to some people whilst I was there. And yeah, I think that will probably do it. If you raced at Holkham, let me know how you got on and how you found it in the comments below. I like hearing about how people got on with their races and their positives and negatives and how they found the course and stuff like that. So I'd love to hear if you did it. And yeah, if you've got any questions about anything that I might have mentioned, then let me know and I can answer them in the comments below. And I will see you next time for some more triathlon related content. Peace.